tell us all about ancient archaeoastronomy in North America. Go
Well,
ahead, Bill.
thanks, Joe, for the intro. And let me just say a couple things that get you where I am here. Like Joe said, I've always had an interest in history and ancient stuff. Nat Geo all my life, subscriptions, and spent time in the West. I traveled to a lot of the Anasazi ruins in Arizona. Found those really interesting. And like Joe said, I've traveled to different sites around the world. And what's interesting is that I subscribe to a couple of archaeology magazines, and as I was planning world travels, I saw that there were archaeological tours with specialists in central United States here in Mississippi and Georgia, going up to Ohio, and they were studying ancient ruins here. And it was like $5,000 for one of these tours. And I thought, well, what the heck? All I need to do is study myself, get into a car, spend gas money and hotel money, and I could probably look at all these sites myself. And I actually started doing that about 3 years ago in the Indiana, Ohio areas. I've probably been to 100 sites at this point, and traveling will probably be a lifelong passion into the South and Kentucky and West Virginia, and wherever there are these ancient sites that I'm going to tell you a little bit more about in a minute here. So, the link to astronomy, since I really enjoy astronomy, I've been in Fort Wayne and a member here for 10 years, is that when you look at these sites, there are definite interesting astronomical features to those. So I thought, what the heck, this might be a good presentation, and the board thought that it was a good idea as well. So that's how I got here. So with that, let's take a look into this vast subject, which is too much to cover in a short period of time, but we're going to try to narrow the field a bit. So here we go. What is archaeoastronomy? So first of all, if we take archaeology, which is the study of human history, prehistory, through the excavation of sites and the analysis of artifacts and other physical remains, we link that to astronomy, which is the study of celestial objects and phenomena beyond Earth's atmosphere. Thus, archaeoastronomy is the study of how people in the past understood astronomical phenomena, the study of the astronomical practices, celestial lore, mythologies, religions, and worldviews of ancient cultures, and the study of archaeological sites and artifacts to determine the astronomical knowledge of ancient, especially prehistoric people, and what they believed about the sun, moon, and the planets, etc. And we're going to focus on this third part here today, the study of local archaeological sites built by ancient peoples with astronomical basis in mind. And remember, these are just theories because we have nothing written that explains anything. So there are many different thoughts and theories about many different areas here that we're going to look at, and I'll touch on things. We could talk about all this stuff. The pyramids of Giza are fascinating. I've been there. Those pyramids align to the Orion belt stars. Stonehenge is astronomically aligned to solstices. Ancient Maya and Aztec sites, the buildings are astronomically aligned. If you want me to come back sometime, we can do another presentation. But for example, at Chichen Itza, go to YouTube and watch the progression of the serpent down the steps during solstice, where the shadow, they actually built the pyramid with in exactness to show a serpent coming down the steps. So they've had astronomical event knowledge for sure. There's an old observatory, 800 years old, or in 800 AD in South Korea. Famous stuff out west at Chaco Canyon, and you probably have heard of Cahokia, the largest ancient complex in North America with a lot of mound alignment and solstices and equinoxes. So these are some popular sites, and I'm just touching on this stuff. This isn't the meat of the presentation at all. So, in all of the slides, I'm going to go fairly quickly because I'd rather you just see the scope of this than any in-depth evaluation in any particular area. But look how the pyramids, these are the three big pyramids, and there are like 20 pyramids on the Giza Plateau. So these are the main three. Look how they align to the Orion stars. Pretty interesting, huh? And you see the nomenclature here. And again, I'm not spending a lot of time here. Look at Stonehenge. You see the precision, if you can visualize how it looked, 2,000 years ago with the winter solstice, symmetrically splitting the buildings here. This is just gee whiz neat stuff. So, my thesis of the night, or the emphasis, is that we don't need to travel far to see evidence of archaeoastronomy and ancient site construction. We got thousands of ancient sites in the United States, primarily east of the Mississippi River, that were explored and documented, but unfortunately, through years of erosion, destruction, looting, etc., the number of remaining sites are much less. At one time, I think there were like 100,000 sites in the eastern United States, and that number is much less now, of course. Ohio has some of the most famous sites in the United States. Indiana has a few as well as some not so well known, and we're going to take a look at those. I need to get you to what we're talking about from the era and the people and all of that. So this is really a broad brush. We've got, how did people get to America? The main theory is through the Bering Land Bridge from Eurasia. We've got people settling in the Western United States, the Pueblo cultures, the Anasazi. We've got people settling in the Eastern United States. The culture is called the Mound Builders, and that's what I'm going to focus on. And I'm going to specifically focus on more of our immediate area than looking at the entire Eastern United States, just because I think you'd enjoy it more to know that there's stuff close to home here. And just another depiction here, you've got many peoples that we're going to talk about in this era: Fort Ancient, the Hopewell, the Adena. Actually, it's in reverse order. The Adena is the oldest, with the Hopewell, Fort Ancient, and the Mississippians following in through the centuries. Starting way back in this chart, 10,000 BC, you see the different civilizations. Our focus is going to be in this woodland Mississippian period from about 1000 BC to 1500 AD of the sites that we're going to look at here. Just another shot of that, because we're not talking about paleontology and the whole history of man from day one, but we're up here in the period of the woodland period primarily. So we're going to talk about a culture here called the Mound Builders, ancient peoples in North America who constructed large earthen mounds and earthworks, or henges as they're called. I'm going to throw you for a loop and call it a couple different things just to confuse you. But they built these for ceremonial, burial, and social purposes. These cultures thrived between 1000 and 1500 AD. And like I said, throughout the eastern U.S., central parts of the U.S., present day, the southern U.S. as well. The primary cultures are the Adena, known for their burial mounds and circular earthworks. They practiced agriculture, but also relied on hunting and gathering. Hopewell and Mississippi cultures, before the Hopewell and Mississippian cultures that followed them. Hopewell, noted for elaborate trade networks. They also built geometric earthworks and produced intricate art, followed by the Mississippian cultures, the most complex of the mound builders, creating larger urban centers, practicing intensive agriculture, and had hierarchical society with powerful leaders. So, this is an evolution through thousands of years. Again, I'm not the expert here. There's overlap, there's sophistication in their social structures, their leadership, their banding together, nomadic, growing into local groups, evolving into centralized control, things like that. If we look at key characteristics, the mounds that we're talking about here are conical burial mounds, or they may be flat top platform mounds, or effigy mounds, which are animal, reptile, or bird-like in shape. And we're also going to talk about the geometric earthworks, or the henges, that they built basically, picking up dirt and putting them in baskets, and building these natural uh, landforms over extended periods of time through communal labor. Uh, we're trying to show here that it was often, this building was aligned with celestial events like solstices and equinoxes, and construction typically involved careful observations of the sun, moon, and the stars. And this is through centuries we're talking about. Mounds and earthworks often served as foundations for temples or ceremonial centers, may have taken centuries to build and add layers as well. So, you might have a mound that was built in 100 BC, but that mound was continuing to be layered upon 1,000 years later through radiocarbon dating. They found out these things. Social and religious practices. Yes, mounds were often associated with burial rituals, including a belief in the afterlife, reflecting stratified society where leaders and priests held significant power. Ceremonies like feasting, rituals, and offerings to deities or ancestors were a practice. They all kind of went away in 1500 AD. CE is I forgot what it stood for, but it's what I'm talking about is AD here, where the cultures vanished, and I'm not specializing in that area after that time period, where there's kind of a void until the pilgrims came here and we started to see Native Americans with the whole progression of the United States. So, but it could have been disease, a lot of things where all of a sudden this stuff just went away. Here's a depiction of different phases of what we're talking about. You can see these ancient people, feasibly excavating and building a mound. Lots of history on mounds, basically starting in the 1800s, where there were many excavations done in the United States, uncovering skeletons and artifacts and ceremonial, material. But this is a depiction, a cross section of a mound. You can see some of the artifacts. I just threw all this stuff on a chart here just to give you an idea of the people we're talking about. And you can see here, this is an earthwork or a henge that I'm referring to, and just shows what people may have been doing on that henge. The same with this picture to the bottom, on the bottom right here. You can see this earthen structure where people are in it and worshiping in some manner. So some aspects of henge construction were with astronomical alignments to significant solar and lunar events, such as summer solstice and sunset on the winter solstice. The people had to have knowledge of the movements of the sun and the moon used to track seasons for agricultural cycles, religious, or timekeeping purposes. By marking the position of the sun at specific times of the year, they could determine planting and harvest times. I mean, it mattered, right? It's cold out there in the winter. They had to know when to do things or they might die. Besides practical purposes, henge and mound alignments with celestial events were likely tied to religious ceremonies where the sun, moon, and stars had symbolic meaning. Gateways allowed access to the interior of the earthworks as well. They use simple tools here to build, nothing elaborate. Aligning a henge structure with celestial events required a deep understanding of the geometry, particularly in determining the correct angles and measurements for placement of stones or markers. Constructing such structures would have required coordinated labor over long periods, often involving many people working together to align stones accurately according to astronomical markers. So remember, everything we're going to look at here, and this is mainly a visual presentation of what we currently can see out there. There's no written records of anything. So it's basically theoretical of the science that we're looking at here. All I want you to get out of this chart is in the 1800s, there were intense efforts to catalog these ancient mounds and earthworks. And the red red areas show you the preponderance of where the mound builders resided. You can see heavily, as you would expect, along rivers, the Mississippi, the Ohio. A lot of the Ohio River, a basis for the Ohio State, which is really like a hotbed of activities. It was like, for some reason, the focal point of a lot of this culture. But it also, traveled south, many things in the south, even Florida, even New York. So I'm not done with my studies yet, but I'm focused on the more immediate area here, and my knowledge level is there. So let me take a quick drink here. Sorry to catch my breath. So here's what are we talking about here when I'm talking about a mound? It's not a pile of dirt. It could be, but some of these mounds are magnificent. So if you go to Dayton, Ohio, down to Miamisburg, you're going to see the largest burial mound in the eastern United States here at Miamisburg Mound. About 68 feet tall, now 65 due to erosion and excavation. Unearthed skeletons and things like that in 1869. Part of the Ohio Historical Society, managed by the city of Miamisburg. You can see my car way down there. Pretty good sized mound to climb and see the perspective of how far away the car is. What I'm talking about with these earthworks, here's some general pictures of something I'm going to show later, which are primarily from Newark, Ohio. But you look at the precision of this. It's very symmetrical, uniform, perfect, right? And some of the heights on these, they could be over 20 feet tall. And I guess I should read the words and not just look at the pictures, but they hand dug these, formed the walls, layered with soil, clay, sand, gravel, heights ranging to over 20 feet tall, depending on the site. Geometric patterns, primarily what you see are circles and squares. We're going to talk about an octagon here, some ovals, some U and D shaped enclosures. Again, predominantly circles and squares. The size of shapes also vary. We're not talking small here. We're talking large, quarter-mile circumference, 20 to 40 acre sites. So these are large structures. I want to talk about technology real quick. Ground penetrating radar has been around for a while. Magnetometers, measuring, metallic content in the ground. The world-changing technology has been LiDAR over the last 20 years. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with or have seen stuff on television where, this, pulse laser instrument, mainly from airplanes or drones, are changing, the way that we can research in the world. And like, for example, in the Yucatan, they're finding new Mayan cities that they didn't know existed. And in the Amazon, where they're finding cities where they did not expect cities to exist in those Amazon areas. So this LiDAR, and I'm going to show you pictures of this. And I'm actually going to show you that you can take your own LiDAR imaging from the internet, like I did for some of these pictures coming up here. Google Maps, Google Earth have been very effective in finding ancient sites, as well as U.S. Geological Survey has a great site with information on it. So I just want to mention the technology involved here. So let's take a look at what we're going to look at for the rest of the presentation here. I want to stay local for us because I think you get a kick out of what's in Indiana and Ohio. We're going to start with the Ohio more famous sites here: Newark, Serpent Mound in Newark, and southern Indiana at Angel Mounds, and then kind of bring you closer to Fort Wayne here, where I'm going to talk about a number of earthworks that are within close driving distance. And I'm even going to show you a henge, an earthwork in Fort Wayne. So how's that for a treat? Okay, let's start out with probably the most famous effigy mound in the world, actually. It's the Serpent Mound. I'm sure you've heard about it. It's a National Historic Landmark selected to be a UNESCO site. We've got the Adena and Fort Ancient cultures involved here. There's some debate about the age of this because radiocarbon dating has some disagreements. It's actually pretty large disparity from what I could find of 300 BC versus 1100 AD. Not sure what the story is there, but this is large. This is about a 1,300-foot long snake, height of about 1 to 3 feet, depending on the location, and about 20 to 25 feet in width. If you look at an overview here, you see the tail, the coil of the snake, the body, and the mouth is at the top here with what's acknowledged to be an egg in its mouth. And you see that serious studies have been happening at this site since the mid 1800s. I only put this slide here for you. It's probably my head in the way of at the visitor center. The visitor center at this site. It's a neat visitor center, but they point out solstice, winter solstice, equinox, sunrise, summer solstice information, depending on the angle that's taken in the snake body here. I put a question mark because they put a question mark at the site, saying that due to short sight lines and the inability to define precise alignments for the U-shaped curves of the mound, it may not be possible to determine whether they really intended to build this serpent mound to be aligned with these measurements. This is all theoretical. This is the information at the site. Other people have went into much more studying here. My purpose here is to not go over these details, but to show you angles and to say that, different people, different groups are studying different aspects of this serpent and have their own theories about equinoxes, sunrises, and solstices. And I just put this here for, just for illustration for you. Another shot, kind of hard to see, but if you're looking at the mouth of the serpent with the egg, winter solstice sunset here, and sunrise looking back the other way. This is primarily just a visual presentation to you for the rest of the night here. So you can just sit back and kind of look at the site and go, well, yeah, that makes sense. Or, yeah, I'm scratching my head at that. Newark Earthworks in Newark, Ohio. World famous. In 1837, Squire and Davis were hired by the Smithsonian Institute to map many different sites around the country. And they've got a book out that you can buy, a reproduction that has their information in it, but they've done major tracking of sites in the United States. And what they saw in 1837 was the largest set of geometrical earth enclosures ever built, not just like in Ohio or the United States, but the world. Basically, the entire city had structure to it. And I think the visitor center was closed when I was there, but I think they have a model depicting what Squire and Davis saw in 1837. And you can see it at the bottom of the chart here, which is an amazing, it's an amazing site. All that's basically left are what's within the two circles here, the octagon earthworks and the great circle earthworks. And we're going to talk about those. If you go to, in general, if you go there, you're going to see this kind of stuff. I think these are my pictures. A couple of them are. You can see the henge here. This is the great circle. I just wanted to point out from the Squire and Davis documentation that somebody on the internet noticed that they thought the differences between these two circles at the two different sites had to do with the moon apogee and the perigee. I thought, well, that was interesting. Okay. maybe. If you're looking at an aerial map here, this is what you're going to see. Not too, impressive, I guess, or that features aren't too impressive. Let's talk a little bit about the site. Hopewell culture, 100 BC to 500 AD era. Circle, octagon, you can see dimensional information there. The octagon is located on a golf course, by the way. And new information in the 80s is the current theory here that I'm going to show you about solar alignments and lunar alignments. Primarily lunar alignments at the octagon site. The great circle here, hard to tell in the picture, but it's going to come out for you in a minute with the LiDAR imaging. It's a very large earthwork. I just put in here anecdotally that the Great Pyramid could fit inside of this earthwork. So we're talking major, geographical building of structure here. So look at the LiDAR imaging. It's amazing to me. This is my LiDAR imaging from the U.S. Geological Survey website. You basically put in anywhere you want in the United States, and you can get LiDAR imaging to whatever you're looking at. But look how neat these structures and these earthworks come out. This is in the city of Newark here that it's sitting in, but these structures stand out for sure. Here's a little bit more of a close-up. Look at the precision of this. Look at there's also a henge, an earthworks situated outside of the octagon here and the circle, and you see individual mounds that are built at each one of the entry points. I just think this is amazing, and so does many of the specialists in the world who consider this one of the most world-renowned sites for ancient peoples. This is what they'd be looking at with the moon, and the caveat is we don't know for sure, but the theory that they've been settling on is that they built this octagon based on the moon's 18.6 year long cycle. And what that's talking about at the bottom here is that the lunar nodal cycle, which is the period it takes for the moon's orbital plane to complete one full circle of wobble. I don't know if that's a technical term or not, causing noticeable variations in the moon's apparent position on the horizon over time, most notably affecting the extreme points of its rise and set positions. So the bottom line is the moon is setting in different places. The moon is rising in different azimuths based on where it is in its 18.6 year cycle. So the ancients must have been studying this stuff for a long time, because the theories on the next page, where this whole octagon is based on these moon rises along its 18.6 year cycle. Pretty interesting. If I look at the Great Circle, I have poured over the internet literature. I've got a lot of books here, and I cannot find any astronomical alignments for the Great Circle, which is the southernmost artifact here. So I'm just putting it in here for completeness for you. Okay, ready to travel to Angel Mounds historic site in Evansville. This looks like a Mississippian culture. It's a later building period. They had 14 mounds originally. Looks like 11 are still remaining. We're going to see astronomical alignments centered on Mound A, which is the biggest in the center. It's about a 30-foot high mound. It's a platform mound. It's flat with 2 levels, large base. There's different theories of stellar alignments here, and I'm going to show those to you. First of all, here's my LiDAR imaging of the site. And you can see some of the definition of the mounds in here. So if you go to the indiana.gov site, they're citing solstice information, lunar minimum north, lunar minimum south setting based on angles of looking over. It's one mound looking over other mounds to get these alignments to these astronomical events. And in fact, in 2022, it had been recognized that the entire site is organized to the orientation of the Milky Way. There's an ancient ceremony called the Path of Souls that this has been attributed to, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second, during the time frame of the summer solstice. And you've got the people who put this theory forth here, Romain and Herman. This is reversed. This is looking from north to south, but you can see this picture shows alignments of these mounds. And Gregory Little, who's got a pretty good encyclopedia of all the sites in the United States, so he's saying he's putting some science to this. He's utilizing his Starry Night Pro, software program and GPS coordinates of Mound A, and he's zeroing in on the winter solstice in 1100 AD. So he's purporting that we have these alignments with Cygnus, Orion, rising, Orion setting, winter solstice. And he's got a book out called The Path of Souls, which he explains this in a lot more detail of why he believes this to be the case with the ancients looking at the Milky Way and tracking the stars and building their civilizations based on these stellar alignments. I'm moving fast because, like I said, what I want you to see here today is a perspective of many sites versus spending a lot of time on any individual sites. And I'm hitting the most famous sites first, and then we'll go into less obscure sites coming up. Mound State Park, this state park is the most visited site in Indiana. Angel Mounds was second, but it's a neat park, and it's got a great visitor center, and you can see the information here. They call it the Great Mound, but it's really an earthwork. It's not the mound is eroded. There's no mound really. It's just this earthwork, this embankment, and it's very large, 210 feet in diameter, circular outer embankment, 9 feet high, 63 feet wide, big ditch, deep ditch. And from aerial photography, you're going to see very difficult to see anything through the trees, right? In your left side view. Ball State, I have a study from Ball State where they superimposed where some of the structures were from the map onto the site here. LiDAR imaging really brings out what's there. And to the left is what the state park hands you when you take a tour. And what we're going to be focused on, and what the park focuses on, is the area at the bottom of the screen where the Great Mound is located. And here's a more zoomed in image of that. And you can see, high fidelity, and you can see the gateway, you can see the ditch, you can see the 210-foot diameter enclosure. You see this other, you see other henges that are located next to it here. You got to look closely, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but if you look at the charts after the fact, you can look and zoom in and see this stuff, or go to the USGS site and bring up the data yourself. This is from Mound State Park. They're showing astronomical alignments here like this. This blue dot, there was a mound at this Fiddleback henge, but they're calling alignment with summer solstice. You see north here. You see equinox, solstice. They're attributing this lower henge to Fomalhaut rising. So it's not just somebody on the internet putting this stuff there. This is from Mound State Park. And I actually just cut out a picture from the park here. This is what you see from the previous slide that you couldn't read. And they talk about the alignments that I just described. These alignments are presumed to have been precisely placed to allow one to view the sunsets during the summer and winter solstices at the spring and fall equinoxes. Fritz Zimmermann went on to add that he thought Aldebaran rising and Rigel rising had some significance at this site as well. That's concluding Mound State Park. I'm sorry if I'm not clear jumping to the next park. I'm going to jump to lesser known information. Newcastle, Indiana, Henge Group. This site's on public land, but it's not preserved. It's actually at the Wilbur Wright Fish and Game Preserve. I went there last summer or in the springtime. You got to be careful. It's a hunting area, so wear your yellow jackets. But I took a stroll of the grounds. Hard to see things in the summertime. Let me show you a little bit. This is probably 20-year-old pictures, but they're showing some mounds, a couple burial mounds. They're showing a henge structure, a henge 11 at the bottom left. Here's my photo. Of course, nothing to see here. Lessons learned to archaeoastronomists. Don't go out there in the summertime when you can't see anything. But it's a famous site. Eli Lilly, the famous Eli Lilly from the pharmaceutical business. I have his book, actually a reproduction from 1937 on ancient antiquities in Indiana, and he's cataloged this site. Look at the amount of henges, earthworks, and mounds at the site. It's a famous, it's an inconspicuous but famous site. Sun alignment, according to Fritz Zimmermann from the Nephilim Chronicles, believes there's sun alignment here to Mound 1 and Mound 4. I have not seen any other information on any other alignments with these other gateways and henges. If you look at LiDAR imaging, you can see what is depicted on that map a little better, and it really comes out pretty well. I'm fascinated by the LiDAR stuff. I'm just moving quickly here. Cambridge City has some henges. This picture was henges, again, meaning earthworks. This picture was taken after the crops had been harvested in the autumn time frame. You could make out, the land elevation changes here. I went there, and of course, I couldn't see anything except crops. But this has been attributed to Adena, 200 BC. Looks like the same size as in Anderson at Mound State Park. A lot of erosion, a lot of farming through the years. This is what it looks like aerially from Google Maps. You can see the henges here. Look closely, you can see them. And then with the LiDAR imaging, you can see it a little better. There are gateways here that aren't real distinguishable. People have more information on this because there's been erosion even through the last 20 years. Just of note, the southern henge has the same dimensions at 210 feet as the Great Henge in Anderson. Assessment from the Nephilim Chronicles: North Henge aligned to the summer solstice, lower henge aligned to the equinox sunrise. There's no marker on this site. There's no historical recognition except people who have put it in their books through the years. Here's another interesting piece of information for you. These three different areas, Mound State Park, Newcastle, Cambridge City, the map plots sun temples or henges or earthworks located at these sites. It shows that not only were there stellar alignments, astronomical alignments that were built at each of these sites, but potentially they were aligned between sites to winter, summer solstices. So did ancient people know how to survey straight lines through many different sites through, we're talking 80 miles here. Had to have a lot of good knowledge of the stars, constellations to pull this off. Here's what I thought. I thought, okay, I saw this on the internet. Maybe this is taking some liberties because they're not really where the cities are. Well, I pulled out Google Maps and I accurately as I could put down where these sites were, and lo and behold, it is right. They do line up. I thought it was pretty interesting. Moving right along. If you go to Anderson Mound State Park and then you head toward Muncie, only maybe 5-6 miles away in the city of Yorktown, there's a really neat little earthwork there off the side of the road. I just pulled my car off and parked in somebody's field, and they didn't come out and chase me away. But from the Google Maps, you can't see much. Internet photo shows some definition here. LiDAR really brings out what's there, and it's really neat. It's a large henge. Look, 213 feet circular, very wide, 16 feet wide, 4-foot height. Ball State archaeologists wrote in one of their reports, the site retains integrity and is one of only 2 surviving examples of isolated circular enclosures in eastern central Indiana. Yorktown's Henge Gateway, what I read in, I forgot which of the reports is aligned to the summer solstice. I can't really see the henge opening in here, but more research would be required here. And also, just of note, the Archaeological Conservatory purchased this like 5 years ago from the farmer who owned this land because they thought it was that significant. Other interesting sites. Another one in Newcastle, Indiana. Newcastle High School. This clump of trees here, if you take the LiDAR image, you see a great enclosure. And, this is my photo looking at it. The earthwork isn't too high, maybe a foot, maybe 2 feet tall. This is a clip from a photo from the actual site. Built 2,000 years ago, circular ditch and bank enclosed as a sacred space, and the gateway aligned to the winter solstice sunrise. It's one of only a few surviving earthworks in eastern Indiana. Neat sight to see, not far away. Winchester, Indiana. Doesn't look like much when you're out there. You see a bit of a henge here on the corner of these 2 streets. You look at the field and you may be able to see a little bit of elevation change of some structure. Very hard to see. If you look at aerial viewing, you can make out in the left side the square earthwork a bit, but if you take the LiDAR imaging, it comes out a lot better if you can see this square here. And this is a major structure. Squire and Davis, our buddies from the Smithsonian, did a survey in 1847. You can see what they showed. This is the largest earthen structure recorded in Indiana. Radiocarbon dating somewhere between 1100 BC, 220 AD. There are remnants of Adena Mound and Hopewell earthwork. So this is over, hundreds of years. So this is an interesting gee whiz. So Greg Little, who I've referenced previously, and I've got his encyclopedia of sites in the country, has said he's used Starry Night Pro again to generate movements and position of the stars in 55 AD. And he's showing Orion alignments and Cygnus alignments in the bottom left here. Ball State did their own solar study in a 2006 report based on some information from Mr. Cochran in 1992. They're showing solstices lined to the openings, to the corners of the earthwork. So different people have different interpretations of the site because, like we stated, there's nothing written here, nothing to see here. So you just judge by your own viewing of the possibilities of this, the alignments. Does it make sense? Did they do this for astronomical reasons? Or is it just coincidence? You'll have to make that determination yourself. Last but not least, a couple miles from my house, hey, there's a henge, there's an earthwork. If you look at the top left from Google Maps, comes out a lot more in the LiDAR imaging on the bottom left. Fritz Zimmerman thinks this is a 200 BC apparent equinox alignment. I'm sitting at the site here taking pictures in front of somebody's yard, and they didn't shoo me away, but you can see the definition.
Hey, hi.
Hey.
So,
Hello?
hi. So what's going on there? You guys,
Hey, Mike, can you mute? Mike Arata, can you mute? Can you mute, please? Let me just say this. If you look at LiDAR imaging, you're going to see a lot of, you're going to see a lot of stuff. And you're going to say, oh, that might be something, or this circle might be something. And it turns out to be a swimming pool building. But there's a chain of custody with the 1800 surveys to these sites. So it's not a haphazard, oh, this could be something on a map. There's something documented before that leads you to know that there's something in the ground at a certain location. I just want to mention that it's not just, oh, I looked at a picture here and it looks like there's something on the ground. There's some history to these sites. Okay, in summary, this presentation was just an introduction to you on archaeoastronomy to provide insights as to why ancient people may have constructed mounds and earthworks with certain geometries in our local Midwest area. By no means comprehensive. I thought you'd be interested in the local stuff. The sun and the moon, especially interesting to ancient people for ceremonial and survival needs. I thought that you would really enjoy the fact that modern technology has greatly brought out the visibility into seeing these sites, and that all of you can do the same thing I did. You can look at these sites and make your own determination, or look up things you want to see, different sites. Maybe you're interested in something in West Virginia. It's all there for you. And I'll give you the reference here coming up. Even though time is not too kind to preserving these ancient structures, there are still many interesting sites that you can visit in Indiana, Ohio, and other states. So thank you for your attention here. I've got a list of references. I've got the LiDAR site for you.
Okay.
I've got some of the books, some of the articles. Because I wasn't there in person, I was going to have all my books sitting out for you, but I took a picture of them so that if you've got interest here, this Greg Little book is great. If you want to travel and visit, this Indiana Mounds book is the best. The Nephilim Chronicles, the second best book to travel. And the Squire and Davis 1800 book here, the fourth one. So these four are really what's, the basis of all the stuff that I'm doing. So anyway, that's all I got. Do you have any general questions for me? Otherwise, that's it.
Bill, thank you very much. That really was great. And we will have to talk about organizing a tour someplace. We'll figure out if there is any other interest besides maybe you and me. But I think that would really be interesting. We've got good sites close by. We'll see how that would work. So yes, if you have any questions, now's the time. I have a few, but go ahead, ask your questions.
I have a quick comment. Bill, you're following in some of this footsteps of one of our our members. Um, yeah, I have trouble picking up names, but the who's our
BJ
teacher?
Harper.
Yeah.
I'll have to get. I'll talk with you perhaps privately, but
Okay.
Harper was BJ was very much interested in archaeoastronomy, and she traveled in Europe some to the stone henges and wood henges and things in France and in Great Britain and
Okay.
in Ireland. When I went out to the west, I saw a number of what you would call sun daggers. It looks like a little spiral, but it's been carved in a place in which a finger of light seems to pierce to the center of this little spiral on a solstice day. And those are scattered throughout the Southwest. So we're, I think your presentation is one of the more comprehensive ones we've seen, and you've put a lot of effort into it.
Thank you. And I will check out those Western ones. I am vaguely familiar with what you're talking about. I don't remember where those are, but I'm guessing somewhere Arizona, New Mexico for sure.
I have
Thank
a
you.
Bill,
question. Oh, sorry.
Bill, have they found any woodworking or dirt works tools, primitive shovels, picks, something like that? Have they figured out how they? I mean, digging in dirt by hand is really almost impossible.
No,
So
I think they have, and a couple things. There are neat visitor centers at many of these major sites, and Serpent Mound has a great little visitor center. And the answer is, I'm sure I have pictures of tools and things that they have on display that I believe they have artifacts from. Here's another interesting piece of information on visitor centers. I haven't been to Angel Mounds or Cahokia yet. Two, very famous sites. Cahokia, most famous in the country, really. But the visitor centers are closed at these sites, and they've been closed for a couple of years. You know why? Because there's a lawsuit and there's litigation going on with the Native American nation over taking the artifacts from the Native American peoples. So they're working through that litigation, and I keep calling, and they're saying, okay, by March, April of this year, that they should be open. So is the litigation going to be done? You can read about the litigation in the newspaper, type it on the internet. You'll see that there's, and you're seeing this worldwide. You're seeing countries in Africa saying to Britain, give us our stuff back. So it's in the age we are that people want to reclaim their heritage.
one last question for me, Bill. A lot of these sites have trees growing up around them, and you can't even see them sometimes for the trees.
Right.
Are these trees relatively recent? Were the original sites prairies, and the trees just sort of overgrew them, or did they actually have to clear land in order to build these things? That would really be difficult with nothing but stone tools.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. The obscure sites that are hard to see, you really need to go outside of the summer to get to see. Like I went to a site and I couldn't see it because there was high corn and it was in somebody's yard, and I wasn't just going to walk through their yard, but I saw the sign and I saw the lady, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to work, otherwise I take you to the mount." But so go in the spring or the fall. The second thing is the tree phenomenon, many of these, I haven't showed you a lot of pictures, but there's trees growing all over these mounds. So in my mind, that came much later. Like the trees just started sprouting on the mound. But what you'll see a cornfield in the middle of nowhere, you'll see the mound, a big mound. You can't miss it. But then you'll see trees growing all over the mound. So it's easier to see in the non-summer times.
So you think they were probably prairies and the trees just gradually overtook?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I have a comment in this area too. In looking at the site locations, your map of Ohio, you notice they're clustered down to the southwest area of the state of Ohio, and it's kind of barren in the northwest and up toward Fort Wayne. I suspect that the reason for that clustering is because we have forgotten this area from northwest Ohio running up in to Detroit and then over toward Chicago was once called the Great Black Swamp.
Yeah.
And it's been drained. And so it's, you can just see a sort of a vacant area there. And I suspect that swamp has been there for some period of time. Yeah, that's the map. And if you look at Northwest Ohio, they're barren from those.
Okay, I see. Yeah, okay. I don't have any information on that.
Yeah,
Northwest
that's the
Ohio
area.
here.
That's the
Yeah,
Great Black Swamp.
Yeah, I've been through that area, and you're right. I mean, there's not much there at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the swamps were drained relatively recently. It was like the 1830s through the 1850s, and there was a swamp. And that's one
Yeah,
of the first things that
and
Congress had
to try it and drain it,
yeah,
one of the things a harebrained idea they had, since they could lay railroad rails, they said, well, let's get a pile driver. We'll run it on the rails. We're going to drive pilings down and run the rails across. And we'll just run the rails across and build a rail line up toward Chicago. They got to somewhere in the middle with their pile driver on their rails, and they found that they couldn't get their pylons long enough to hit bedrock. And the pile driver began to sink. They tried to retrieve it. They lost it. The swamp swallowed it.
oh, that's sad.
I can make one comment. I grew up in Evansville, and so I've been to Angel Mounds quite a few times, but it's been a long time since I've been there. But I know one time when I was young, they had at that site, because of that's the Angel Mounds, they did archaeology on that site in the 1930s. And one time, probably in the 60s or early 70s, they had something like 15 Army barracks buildings that needed new roofs on them. And every one of those barracks buildings was floor to ceiling shelving full of artifacts from that site.
Oh.
While my dad was working there, the grounds manager one time let two of us walk through. We didn't touch anything, but we got to walk through a couple of those buildings and just kind of see all the different pottery and artifacts that were there. In the really good ones were more on display. These were just like it was amazing how much artifacts they actually dug up at that site. hopefully be able to open those sites up and see at least some of that stuff again soon.
Well, here's another point of there's a lot of knock on Ball State for destroying sites with archaeological digging and excavation. So a couple of the ones that I referred to today, where was it? The Newcastle. There's a knock that they shouldn't have been. They did not have authorization to perform their surveys in a couple different places. And I forgot the other one, not Newcastle, and no, there's one more. But just FYI.
Yeah, I know. As when I was a undergraduate student, I took a couple archaeology courses, and I know in the 70s there were a lot of people that wished Angel Mounds hadn't been dug in the 30s because techniques were so much better by the 70s. That they felt like, yeah, we learned a lot more if this hadn't been dug up until now, but it had already been done, so there's nothing you could do about it.
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
Well, like I've been down to Anderson to Mounds, and it's like pretty big,
It is.
And then I went out to Cahokia when I was working, part over in Illinois,
Okay.
But the question is like, did you find anything out in your research? Like, I mean, obviously they don't have Caterpillar, to move the dirt, right? So they're using baskets or whatever the technology is.
Right.
Well, how many people did that take, and how big of a tribe do you need to like just build like Mounds State Park in Anderson? I mean, when I look at that, I'm thinking, yeah, there's a guy in the, building a pole barn in the neighborhood, and that ain't no big deal, but he's got all the earth moving equipment and stuff, what I'm saying?
Yeah, Cahokia Mound near St. Louis, you can see from Interstate 70, even though you're a few miles away, and the base of that big mound there covers 16 acres. That's a big mound. So yeah, I kind of second your question. Is like, yeah, how many people does it take to build that?
Well, I think I read a couple things. I mean, I'm no expert. I think I read 1,000 at one of the sites. The other thing is the phenomena of these mounds. It may be centuries of building.
Yeah,
they layered the mound, so they'll find burial stuff deep, and then they'll find other layers of burial later. So people came after people and continued building platforms and mounds. So it wasn't a quick thing. And I mean, probably the same question on the pyramids. If you get away from all the ancient alien theory, how'd they move 2-ton blocks? I mean, I've been on the Nile, I've been there. How do they do all that stuff? I have no idea. I've crawled all over the Great Pyramid on the inside. I've got some embarrassingly sweaty shots from the inside, and it's huge. No idea how people could have moved those huge megalithic blocks.
I have a question, Bill.
Yeah.
You had one of your sources there, the Nephilim Chronicles.
Yeah.
Have you read that? Does any relation to the Nephilim, the biblical thing, or is that just a catchy title that he?
I think it's a well. I mean, I use it as it's here. I use it as a travel guide. So, I'm trying to find all these sites. So I probably read the preface, but it really is about traveling in these areas.
Okay.
So I think it's a catchy title of ancient peoples. I mean, Fritz Zimmerman's got some theories like people came here from Europe, and he's a little outside the box. Actually, I think he's from Fort Wayne. I've watched him on YouTube before. I think he lives in Fort Wayne. So he's got a lot of books. I mean, here's another interesting thing. I didn't veer off because there's so many areas, but his other book, which I have somewhere over here, they have found giant skeletons all over the eastern part of the United States, and it's documented. In I've got newspaper articles from his book from 800 different. There's 800 different examples of 7 to 10 foot skeletons. I can't
Okay.
explain.
Yeah. Well, that's
I have no idea, you know.
that's
And then
one
the
of the-
question is,
yeah.
who are these people? And are they precursor to modern Native Americans, or are they a different people? And there's all kinds of theories on all of this that don't converge in many places at all.
Well, you go to 1000 BC, and of course, David supposedly destroyed the last of the giants who were like 8 to 10 feet tall, and Og, I believe,
Yes.
was the name of one of them. So yeah, and they talked about the size of his bed and stuff like that. So they have dug up some large skeletons or whatever around the country.
It's not just a one-off; it's hundreds.
Ah,
Anything else?
I can just volunteer. As a child, I've seen a giant. He was a member of Barnum and Bailey's circus. My dad was 5'10", and he came up to just above his belt. And the giant, of course, was part of their circus. And he asked for my father to just show him a 50-cent piece. And he took a ring off his finger and he passed the 50-cent piece through it and then put the ring back on. And he says, now you can buy one of these rings. I think they were molded from some cheap metal. And so he was hawking them. So those, whether it's genetic or something like that, something wrong with the pituitary or medical, it's hard to say. But yeah, lots of large people. We have some of them playing basketball now.
Yeah.
Only 7-footers.
Bill, you talked about the distribution of these sites or whatever. I noticed most of them are pretty close to major rivers and stuff. I mean, Evansville's right on the Ohio River site. The ones you showed primarily around Cincinnati and the Southwest, I mean, that's on the Miami River, which goes up through Dayton all the way up to I-70 there, and just a few miles over to Columbus. The one over at Newark, whatever, that's on the Licking River, and that was on the major trail to their big flint mining sources over there, just a few miles east of there. So it was a big trade route and everything else. But so I think they used the water quite abundantly to get to where they wanted to go.
Yeah. Again, thank you.
If there are no more questions, thank you, Bill. And that really was very informative, very interesting. Thank you for doing it.
Sure.
And if there are more astronomical images that you'd like to share, now's the time. Go for it.
I guess I got some pictures that were taken from the last meeting. So even though it's been cloudy and cold, it's still, if you watch close enough, you can catch little windows. And of course, the sun is one of them. These are, the one on the left is actually a stack of 15 30-second or 1/400th of a second. The one on the right with the color is just a single shot. And unfortunately, I can't get the color on the other one. So horse head, I got on the 20th of December. So that came out pretty good. This is taken by the dwarf, which is a 24 millimeter objective, so it's pretty small. Open clusters are great, and this is what is it, M30 something. There's 3 of them, 36, 37, and 38. Orion, this was taken last night with I think it was 6 degrees out, and this was taken with dual band filter. That is M78, and this really kind of shows the smallness of the system, because this is a globular cluster M79, I think. Yeah, so M79. So, but the camera seems to center everything. This is kind of the egress. This is actually the moon overexposed. I did that purposely, and I took a time lapse. Look at 1 o'clock about on that, and you can see Mars coming out. So
Pretty cool.
and there's a proper exposed version of it. So also a couple days, I think earlier, the moon was in the Pleiades, which we used to, this is from Sky Safari. And then here's my shot overexposed, but you can see the stars right in there. We used to watch the occultations on there. That was really a great thing to do. That's all I have. So
Thank you, Phil. Very good.
Busy.
just me and I think Bill, not Bill, but Kent are crazy to do this. I may try a shot tonight. It's -2, but I just won't stick my tongue on my tripod.
Or on the lens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a couple pictures. Let me see. Am I doing this? Is that working?
Yes.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, that's just this is first light with the sea star. Santa brought a sea star. And yeah, I got the moon, you know, whatever. And then that was an Andromeda. I only did about a minute or something, so I haven't processed it. So this is like today. You could see some spots, you know. And I don't know, I tried to zoom in, and I don't think that worked as well as just taking it straight at 1x. So I'm really pretty new at it, but you know, it's kind of cool, you know. You could just put the stuff out on the front walk, and there you go, you know. The sun is looking pretty active. I hope the internet doesn't shut down or something. Okay, that's all I got.
Yeah, if you notice, we actually had some northern hemisphere sunspots for a change. They'd been for a long time. It's been almost all southern hemisphere.
Hmm.
By the way, you were talking about electrical interference. I read an article a few days ago during what was that big aurora borealis we had, the was that April, last April?
October.
The real big one.
October.
Not the second one, the first one.
Yeah.
I think it was in April.
Don't
But
worry.
anyways, it upset some farmers that were doing their plowing in the evening there because they used GPS, and it messed it up their equipment, whatever like that. They crossed over their furrows and crossed over into the next lane or something like that. So their equipment was kind of going berserk during the maximum of that coronum mass expulsion, or whatever you want to call it there, that hit there, which I thought was kind of interesting. That with all that expensive John Deere equipment and stuff like that, it still can't run down the tracks there straight.
that it then? We're done for the evening?
This
It's
is
all good.
Mark. I've been trying to image the horse head this evening. I've got about 40 minutes, but I don't know if I can display it too easily. I could try, but
Okay.
Take a couple minutes. Go ahead.
well, I'll try to show it. Maybe it'll show up through just the camera here. Try at least. I don't know if you can see it.
Got to be
Yeah, you
up
just
there.
gotta hold it up a little more.
A little higher.
A little
There
higher.
you go.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Easily.
yeah, yeah.
That's about
You're
40
good.
minutes right there
Wow.
Plus for that.
Excellent.
on the Sea Star.
Yeah,
Wow,
Sea Star.
Yeah.
pretty neat.
Yeah. So I'll process that in PixInsight, see how good I can get it. But
Put it on groups.
okay.
Put it on our group. We have a few horse head images up there. That'd be a
Mhm.
good addition. And so thank you everyone for coming. And for the board, we have a meeting next week. I guess Tuesday. So we'll see you then.